Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. We welcome your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. All past broadcasts are podcastable. Pick them up at artistfirst.com. And now here they are, your co-hosts, Margaret and Michael Lyons.
I'm scared. Is podcastable a word? I think it is now.
He made a new word.
I think once you say it on the internet, that becomes a word.
It's part of the vocabulary now.
It's out there. You can't take it back. Anyway, I'm scared. No, I'm a Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret, and we're the soul of the everyman. As crazy as that seems. And tonight we're going to talk about fear. And I think that's a topic, Margaret, that everybody can relate to. Everyone has their own, I think, individual fears. A big one is fear of falling or fear of heights. People are afraid of the dark, afraid of various insects, creepy crawlies, right? And all these different fears. And yet, we all, and these fears, large and small, we all oftentimes have to, as John Wayne said, you have to saddle up and deal with it anyway. You have to, in essence, allow the fear, face your fear, and then do what you need to do regardless of fear. And nobody likes it. It's not something that any of us want to do. So tonight we're going to talk about fear because it is such a, it's such a topical thing. It's so important to most people.
Well, fear is, you have your basic body fears. Anything that seems to endanger you physically and cause pain or suffering of any kind, we run from it. It's a programmed part of the physical being.
But I would even put in that same thing, though, I think the fear is the anticipation of it more than it is the actual thing itself.
It can be learned, because suddenly you realize that if I do this, then something can happen. It's kind of like they did that experiment with young babies, and they had put them on a plexiglass, and there was a drop underneath, but Mom was right on the other side of that. And the little ones, as long as they saw Mom, no problem. There was no fear whatsoever. Where they'd sit down, they'd look down, and Mom's over there. I'm going over there. But as they got older, there was the hesitation of, this looks dangerous. So initially, as long as you are trusting someone, then there's no fear.
That's a very good point. I know that I remember reading something like that study that you just mentioned, and some people attribute it to the fact that children don't have a sense of very young children don't have a sense of height or a sense of what could happen. But then I think I recall a different study where they said, well, if you like you said, you have someone that you trust there. If you don't have something that you trust, they don't gravitate. In other words, they do have this innate, or let's say, pre-programmed fear of falling. The infant startle reflex. If you have an infant and they feel insecure, they instantly clutch on. This is something that comes from, the development of our species from creatures that were, primates, but creatures that were living in an environment where it was very important, very very early in life, to grab on and hold on to either your parents' hair, or the boreal tree that you might have been in, or any other type of surface. So there is an innate, pre-programmed fear of falling.
Yeah, no, but infants, they show that when you're holding them
right
flat, and suddenly you just sort of drop you're holding them, but you just drop about a foot, and you can see them do the startle reflex immediately.
The startle reflex,
right? Because it was a physical reaction.
Isn't there a test? In fact, a neurological test they do exactly like that, just to see if you have the startle reflex.
Do you? Yes.
So that's part of our makeup. It's part of our not necessarily the DNA, but yes, it's part of our makeup, that we feel the fear of falling even before we understand what falling is. There's other studies that have been done where the fear of let's say arachnids. A lot of people are afraid of spiders, or things that look like spiders, or snakes. Those two things. Mm-hmm. You can show a silhouette of a spider or a snake to an infant who should have never been exposed to these things ever before, and they will show fear because of the wiring. And before we go too deeply down that path, and that's a fascinating path in and of itself, I would categorize, as you said, those fears as being fears that are at the survival level. And this will probably be going up on the website fairly soon, but we wrote a little sort of a little topic sentence here, and that the fears that we're talking about, we're going to characterize them in terms of the chakras. They have the root chakra, which is the basic body survival chakra, the center of survival. And these are where those fears originate: the fear of falling, the fear of a spider or a snake, the fear that comes from the unknown, the dark, or just something which is a potential threat. I remember when the kids were very small, and I think we've gone to the zoo, and there was a roar of a predator, of a lion, or some big cat, and without ever having necessarily heard that before in their lives, they're instantly afraid, because that's something that strikes deep. Mm-hmm. Into the core survival. I'm prey. I'm somebody's potential lunch, and you get alert real fast. Well, those are all at that root chakra, at that survival chakra.
And it's automatic. Mm-hmm. It's a real fear. You're in it, and once you're in it, you have to control the actions that you're just about to do, because first of all, it's like, no, you don't want to run in front of the giant animal that's there, but you do want to get away. And it's really literally from that chakra. Even when you're falling, or you feel like you're falling, it's almost as if in your root chakra you could feel it compress.
Right.
I have no other way to describe it. It's like base.
Like a sphincter.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah.
You tighten up.
You're just tightened so completely because you're so afraid, and you could feel it rising from there. And it's interesting when you go through a reaction like that, because then you become really aware of, wait a minute, I'm in this fear response. That's really my body doing that.
I think there's something honest about the fears, about the root chakra fears, because they are tied to survival, and they are triggered by, let's say, things that could have been actual threats, a snake or so on. And I think that where we get, where those things become unmanageable is when we build upon them. When you take something which is a root chakra fear and you attach other things to it. This is no longer an existential threat. Now it's a psychosis or a neuroses. It becomes an unreasoning fear triggered by something which is tied down to what was originally a very honest fear, the honest fear of whatever threat it could have been. And though those some researchers and Ekman and so on, those guys, they have found that those let's call them primitive fears, or at least primary, unlearned fears, these sort of a priori fears, can power things which are give power to things which are not truly existential threats. So this is where you get, just to mention it, people have these stress disorders or PTSD or things like that, anxiety disorders, and generally when they're kind of traced to their origin, they're traced down to a point where you felt powerless and you felt as though your life was on the line. You were in a survival situation, a fight or flight, where you could neither fight nor fly. And so the situation that you were in gets tied down to this very honest, very real body level, cortisol level, stress level, fear reaction. And so that base, that root, has a lot of power. You mentioned it just before. When you get triggered down there, you tighten up. And then it's kind of like a flower, like a reaction, like an adrenaline reaction. It flows upward, and you go through the whole startle, then the redirection of blood flow to the large muscles, the instantaneous narrowing of vision, the instantaneous jump in heart rate. You can be sweating. You can be, in a real, fingers tingling reaction based on something which is maybe not as existential a threat as that, but it comes from that root.
Yes. No, it existential threat. Well, it's one of those where it's instinctive when suddenly your body is I don't know how to. It's almost like there's another instinctive part of your brain. It's like your base of your brain. It's like leaps up, and it's like you are breathing quickly. You're looking around. You're evaluating things very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I had that response one time when I was just sitting outside, and then around the corner came this huge bear.
Mm.
I mean, super huge. It was, and then when your brain goes, you're not going to be able to handle that.
No. Right.
And I just ran into the house very quickly. But it wasn't acting as if it was a threat. It was just sort of there, foraging. But you're like, I don't want to be snacked on. That was the response, and it was.
It's visceral.
Yeah. There are no words. It's that part of the brain that's like, you ain't staying here.
Right.
Go.
And there are no words. It's literally
Mm-hmm.
action. The hairs, truly, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So this reaction, this level, is something I think which is common amongst humans and amongst all creatures. You can see this same set of responses in mammalian, in all throughout any organism which reacts with fear for its survival. We have similar characteristics. There's also a trigger for aggression there. That's the fight. So you go from fear to aggression very, very quickly. And what people see when they're operating in the root chakra is they get triggered in fear and they come out in anger. They come out in combativeness, and sometimes you're in a fear anger reaction before you even know how you got there.
Right.
But I think all that is in that first chakra in the root, and it goes up from there, and it has its power from there. Next up in that chain, if you will, the second chakra, which is procreative, it's the sex, food chakra. There's fears there too, but I think they're certainly as important, but they're more derivative. When you're in the sex, food chakra, you're really in the chakra which says, I'm fearing lack. I'm fearing non-existence from the point of view of not being able to procreate. I'm fearing the lack of nutrition, the lack of access to resources. When you deny somebody these things, they are afraid, and it can again trigger anger. You can see a lot of murders, which are triggered by either sex or food or money or things of that. Things that we're talking about sort of this second level chakra. It isn't, money isn't the root of all evil, but it is that which we desire. Sex isn't the root of all evil, but it's that which we desire. And then if you deny people this, they become angry. They'll do a lot of things to get money. They'll do a lot of things to get sex. They'll do a lot of things to get food and resources. And these things can be driven as fears. Well, this one's going to take this away from me, so then I have to fight back, or I am in a fear reaction state, which triggers an anger reaction state. This is the crimes of passion, all come from this chakra, and a lot of those crimes of passion are driven by fears. This one's going to take my mate away from me. This one's going to take my livelihood away from me. This one's going to take sustenance away from me. These are all in that second level chakra. They're still powered at that low level, at that low energy, but it's one above. You're not about to be bitten by a snake, but you feel in that same anger reaction when somebody says to you, if you don't do this, I'm gonna blackmail you. I'm gonna take your job away. That's the same level of anger reaction, but it's a different fear level.
Right. It's interesting because when you are in the first chakra, it really is survival. In other words, being in the body. All right. But the minute you go to the second and the third, the fight is about what's mine. So you'll fight for what's yours, as opposed to it necessarily being a straight survival response. Like, this is mine. I need these to survive. These are mine. They're not yours.
I think the key word there is need.
Well, it's my need. Maybe that's the best way to term it. It's exactly. My need, so you stay away. Right. And that's when you get all the fighting. It's like pushing. Where is the boundary here? Where's the wall?
We see it, when you see territorial fights. Well, that's sort of that's at that second level. This is my area. I need these resources. These are mine, and I'll fight you for them. I'm afraid if, when you see this among animals, when one animal invades the territory of another, there isn't this this animal is not trying to kill the other, but there's an existential second level chakra which says, this is my area where I have mates. This is my area where I do my hunting. This is my area where I am supreme, and you're invading it. It's this.
Well, you have if you're talking about the animal world, they will be challenged if one has set up, this is my fiefdom. Everything the light touches
is my kingdom. That's right.
And you will have challengers to that.
Yes.
So that typifies that the animal world, they may not actually engage in fighting where one loses their life. It may be just displays where, or who's bigger, who's stronger.
Well, again, mating rituals, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, again, the second chakra: sex, food, dominance. You'll have, and you know, we shouldn't exempt humans from this. You have certain rituals, and you can see it in displays of wealth or displays of physical health or of beauty or whatever it is. These displays, and then the competitions that we engage amongst ourselves are our mating rituals, if you will. And then once you have the during the competition, you aren't necessarily going to end up with one individual dead and the other one not, but you are going to end up with somebody wins and somebody loses. And this is the win. This is the win-lose part of this. You know, if you're winning at sex and you're winning at food and you're winning at territory, you're dominant. You're powerful. Your genes are going to pass on. This is that level. And the fears of not getting those things or of having those things taken away are all at that second level. So they do have an existential component, but it is derivative. It isn't immediate life or death, and it's not just impersonal, I'm going to eat you, life or death. It's I'm going to make you not exist, or I'm going to make you less important. I'm going to control you. This is the second level, the second chakra.
Well, this is what I mean. This is that mine kind of thing, which is hysterically funny when you're watching the little ones and they discover the word mine.
Mine and no, mine. Those two words are great. But here you are. You know, so fear lives at the first. Fear lives at the second. It has a great, comfortable place where it can draw your energies in the second. And then there's the third chakra. And the third chakra is the hara. It's the power center. It's really and now we're kind of mixing a little because there is dominance in the power center, but you're also talking now about command. You're talking about influence. You're talking about politics. You're talking about a different sort of dominance. It's rule. It's law. It's the power over, power under. And in these cases, fear lives because it's the fear of being powerless. When you're under, when you're losing, when you're less dominant, you are afraid that this is going to make me unable to fulfill what I want to do. When you thwart someone's ability to be free, you imprison them, you incarcerate them. This is all at the third chakra, and there's a lot of fear there. If you look at what people will do in order to become dominant, or what they'll do to escape from a tyrannical system, or to impose their will on others, these are the drivers from the third chakra. Go ahead.
I'm just observing that. Okay, the first has to do with just existence. Second, you can look at it in terms of family. Okay, third chakra, culture.
And society. Yeah.
But that's interesting because culture begins to form its own feeding system, if you would. In other words, you decide who's in charge and who's not in charge, and what the mores are for that particular culture. What is appropriate, what is inappropriate.
Right. Who's in, who's out?
I'm sorry?
Who's in and who's out? Who's the outer darkness? Who's within the tribe?
Who is doing what the tribe deems acceptable.
Right.
Okay, and depending on the culture, that's when you start getting those standings. In other words, who is on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and then who winds up on the top, and who
Hierarchies.
And every culture has them.
Oh yeah.
When you're at that third chakra, that's when the clashing starts.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the cultures start forming different types of conflicts, because sometimes it's a habit that one culture has, it's that another culture feels this is unacceptable, and they start fighting over it. And the typical one with wars is resources, the land. I'm taking this land because we can get the resources from the land, and whatever those may be, and dominating different peoples.
Well, and I would throw into that when you talk about cultures, you talk about right versus wrong. That's why it's also part of the law, the mores, the laws that we call our right versus the wrong. And then if you then extrapolate that, it becomes this fear of you're not doing it right, so therefore you are wrong, and we have to fight against you. We have to be afraid of you. This is where you say that you have the fear of the enemy, the fear of the outsider, and then the fight against the enemy, the fight against the outsider. And it is cultural. You can see it in other levels. Of course, there's individual predator versus prey fights at the first chakra. But these become writ large. These are societal, cultural, political fears.
It's an extension of mine. This is my culture, mine.
Right. Each one of these, as you said, builds one on top of the other, like three bubbles. This root triggers things, but it has its tendrils running up through the sex and food and up into the cultural and power. And that's where that blossom of fear, it goes all the way up into those three things and gathers a lot of your body's energies and resources if you allow it, if you allow yourself to dwell down there. And it's very seductive, I think, Margaret, is that these things feel important. They feel like they really, really matter. They feel like they really are something which grabs a hold of your essence, your spirit, your being, and says, pay attention to me. Or you'll be shunned. Pay attention to me, or you'll be powerless. Pay attention to me. You won't have sex or food. Pay attention to me, or you won't even be. That's what I mean. This is where you have this fear nexus. These three rotating nexi, right?
Yes, but at the cultural level, I believe that's where you are introduced to shame.
Absolutely.
Okay, much more so. There is an element of that, of course, in the family, but that's an extension of what the culture deems as shameful. And all that mixes in, because shame is an interesting feeling. I'm not sure if I can call it an emotion.
It's on the fear side, but it has a root into fear, but it's not a pure emotion. It is always connected with an outside judgment. Because shame is different from guilt. Shame is an outside judging that you are wrong or bad.
Yes, and usually you need to have a group that does that, and that is how people have been manipulated through the centuries, is by having the larger group basically shame them into certain behaviors.
I think I'm afraid we're near the end of the first half hour, but I think that's exactly a great place to jump off into the next half hour, is that these are the fear nexi. These are the fear things that allow people to control others through fear. Let's take a little break. Now, don't be afraid, because we'll be back, and we'll talk a little bit more about fear on the other side.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhum.music.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Shh, everything's okay. We're back. I hope you weren't afraid. I was terrified.
You were?
Yes. But no, we rose above it. I think I just wanted to go back a little. So in the last half hour, we were talking about really the about fear, but I think we did a nice job of kind of illustrating the various types of fear and actually the consequences. Some of the things that fear is used for. Fear is used for control. Fear is a great motivator. Fear is also the pathway to anger and to aggression. But all those three, all fear is I would postulate contained, or at least related to, these first 3 chakras, these base chakras, if you will, the root, the sexual chakra and the power center, the hara. And then I think there's this wonderful transition. When you go to the fourth, when you enter into the heart, you leave fear behind. And this is something which is incredibly important for the advancement. You must advance into the heart, and through advancing into the heart, leave fear behind, and realize and understand that this is where you combat fear, as is many times said in many different many different writings. The seat of courage, the seat of love, but the seat of courage, kur, is the heart. Courage doesn't mean that fear isn't there. Courage, in fact, means that you understand your fear intimately. You understand that you are afraid. You understand that yes, the fear is an incredibly important motivator. Fear is something which tells you that to pay attention, that this is important, that you could die, that this could happen, all these things. But then you reach the fourth chakra and you realize that yes, I encompass my fear, I understand my fear is there, as the little monk once said. Fear arises, and I just, yep, there's my fear, all sitting right there. Hello, fear.
Well, it's understanding that it is part of your existence down here. This is just, it's part of it. It's learning to be able to hold center, hold balance, and not be dominated by any one thing. No emotion, no overthinking, no physical impulse. Just to be centered and aware and consciously make your decisions, because when you are motivated by any of the others, you are in an unconscious mode. Now, and that is a mind blower for most people, because they think, well, unconscious means my eyes are shut and I'm sleeping. And it's like, no, consciousness is defined very differently if you're talking about awareness. You are making conscious decisions instead of impulsive decisions. An impulse, if you're driven by your impulses, that is the more body, corporeal aspect of you, the more animalistic aspect of you. But you are more than just animal. And it's that awareness that we try to train ourselves into being balanced and conscious. Not to be, not to push off your fear, because that's the illusion. People think that, well, you just throw your fear away and
no more fear.
No more fear. It's like, no, it's understanding the fear is there, and it is a response, but it's not controlling you.
It's so much there that I just want to unpack, because I think you said so many good things. First of all, the center, the heart chakra is the center. And all the three first power, the first three chakras can short circuit past the heart to the others. You can speak in fear. Your mind can be occupied by fear. Fear can block your access to spirit, block the seventh. You can fear can get around the heart. It tries very hard to short circuit the heart, go past it, and allow words of anger and fear to emerge, allow thoughts of anger and fear to dominate you, to act impulsively, to act with abandon, to not have any governor. But once fear has to pass through the heart gate, it cannot abide there. It becomes contained there. It also becomes understood there. And then your fear coming into the heart It can't exist there as fear. It becomes encapsulated, and then the words are, as you said, you have this ability to observe, to be, to understand your fear. It isn't gone. You observe it. See, there it is. There's fear. It is driving all this energy up into this huge ball of energy. It comes into the heart, and the heart says, okay. And you have a moment to take stock, to actually look at, to observe, and then you give yourself the choice in the heart, and then the words and the actions mitigated through the heart come out as words which can reassure, or actions or minds or thoughts which are not impulsive. They're
right. If you choose to go with your impulse, and it's automatic, that lower frequency can fill the heart, and what comes out of your mouth is what you have chosen.
I would even say it just goes right past. It doesn't fill the heart. It short circuits it. It goes right past it and gets to the mouth. It gets to the mind. It blocks the connection to spirit. It isolates you. It puts you into a maelstrom because you're not centered. The heart is that centering point.
It's the ability to perceive yourself in that moment. That is key to whether or not you have chosen.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to go the way you've always gone, which is into a reaction.
Right.
But to break that habit takes quite a bit of effort and awareness. It can be done, but you really must want to do it.
Yeah.
And that means that you're not going to be thinking of mine anymore.
Yes.
To abide in the heart means that you go past the concept of mine, into what's out there and caring about the life that is in front of you, that is surrounding you.
The Dalai Lama was working with some of these folks who were doing the emotion studies, and his take on this was that the triggers, the emotions that are triggered, you can't stop the trigger. You can't stop the reaction. You can't stop it bubbling up into the first, the second, the third. But then what you can do is become aware. You say to yourself, as the little monk did, I can't remember his name, fear rises, and fear is there, and it rushes in, and it fills me, and I say, there's my fear.
That's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. There's my fear again. It's back. Hello, fear. In essence, he was saying that in a little bit of a joke, but what he meant was to say is that you greet, you welcome, you give space for the fear, because it's going to be there. You wouldn't be human without that fear reaction, whatever it is, and his was particularly a certain type of fear that would, without his training, it would overwhelm him, would turn him, would paralyze him. But with this training, which does take time and it does take discipline, you allow the fact that the fear will come, that you will have this reaction, but you let it expand into a space which it feels is infinite, but you know is finite, because you have the perception of the heart, you have the eyes of the heart. So yes, fear thinks it fills the universe, but I know how big the universe actually is, and I can sit back and say, there's my fear. And it will do its thing. It will try very hard to make me do something, to short circuit, to go out my mouth, to control my actions, put me into a state of chaos, put me out of center. But no, you just sit there and let it be. And you
do not engage in it, but you observe it.
Exactly.
That's the difference. People think that observing it means that you've got to pick it up and turn it around and experience all these angles.
No.
And it has nothing to do with it. It's basically being able to observe it and what it actually does.
And I think the heart is the place that has the space for that. That's why you bring it there. So you can make space in your heart for anything. You make space in your heart for fear. You make space in your heart for anger, for all the things which you want to observe. You let them come into that because you say, as you said, you can't throw your fear to the side. You can't turn it off like a switch. It isn't like I'll never be afraid again if I do these meditations. No. You learn. You understand. You become familiar with.
It has its place.
Has its place.
It has its place. And acknowledging that, I think, is the hardest thing for most people, because if they feel fear, they think it's got to be the most important thing in their life. You're making me afraid. Don't do that.
Right. It's bad. The first thing we put on fear is that fear is bad. You know, we judge that this is bad, wrong. This is something I don't want, and I have to get rid of it. So one of the traumas we inflict upon ourselves is to try and cut fear out and encapsulate it. And what that does, there's two different things it does. Trauma, if you try to encapsulate it, you tear a piece of yourself off of your being and you leave it as a ball of fear, as an encapsulated shard of yourself in the past. But these shards hold so much power that they aren't something which you can just leave. They come up and they strike almost without warning with all the power they had before. This is where people become triggered with these terrible traumas, these PTSDs and many other things, because you've shredded yourself, you've shattered yourself. Because it's so bad and so wrong, you try to never feel it again. And the healing process is bringing those things back and giving them enough space, and then looking at them and observing them and saying, yes, that happened. That wasn't me. That was a piece of me, a part of me, a thing that happened to me, but it's not, because the problem with the shattering is the identity, right? You identify, that was me, I am bad, I can't have that, I have to shatter it, I have to tear it apart, I have to leave it in the past. And all those things are what become psychoses, neuroses, traumas that, and things that will come back later, even worse than before.
So allowing space for you. I mean, this is when you really begin to understand who you are. All the parts of you, whether you like them or not.
Yes.
Because the tendency people have is, well, I don't like this part, so I'm going to push it away or ignore it or
cut it off.
Hide it somehow, so it won't present. I'll just present these good parts of me. These pieces right here I can present. And that's not who you actually are. And that's where you get your dissonance, where your internal is not matching your external.
Isn't that interesting that, we talked a little bit earlier about shame. And shame is when the external tells you what parts of you are not presentable.
Right.
And that you agree.
Mm-hmm.
This is shame. This is not presentable. That nobody likes this. Everyone tells me it's wrong, so I have to hide it. This is shame.
And the thing about that is that you have to accept it for it to work.
For it to have power.
Mm-hmm.
You have to agree.
You have to agree. And it doesn't matter if you... How do I say this? If you're part of a culture that uses the shame, and frankly, I don't know of any culture that doesn't use shame, to control a behavior. If you go against it, the entire tribe pretty much descends on you. And that's when the tribe feels that its existence is endangered.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then if they have to get rid of you, then that's what they will do.
It's where you have these honor killings, for argument's sake, or the car line, in essence,
right?
The ostracized, the lepers,
I mean, it's been, if you look through man's history, the ostracized have been treated more than subhuman. As you said, they're sacrificed. They're the ritual of putting all the sins of the tribe on the one, and then sending it out into the wilderness or killing it or what. All that is interesting to me, because that's what shame. It becomes acceptable to do that to a human being through shame.
The other thing, of course, that shame is connected very much with is acceptance. You have to accept it, and if you give it the lie, if you don't accept it, you're going to face the blowback. The telling of a truth in a society where everyone accepts that the thing you're saying is true, and you say it's a lie, you say it's wrong. It is an existential threat to the society, and you will get that existential reaction. Anyway, this is going a little afield, but these things, these fears, and we'll have the graphic on there. The fear is just a lie that you've rehearsed. In a society, the fear is just a lie that you're living. That you've said, these are the things, these are the lies we're going to live by. The heart can make space for all these things and say, it isn't good or bad, it just is. It's not a lie or truth, it just is. Or it isn't. But it's okay either way. Much of the power of shame is in the external judgment of right or wrong, of good or bad, of lie or truth. And it isn't to say that you can't do these things, but the heart is the place which adjudicates, as well as accepts, as well as gives space for, as well as understands and observes. In this space where you have the fears, you can see that, yes, you're right, and you're wrong, and you're wrong, and it's okay. You don't have a place for shame there. You have a place, though, for understanding. The three bases, and especially the third, is where the power of shame comes in, because it's the power of, this is who we are, this is who you are. You have to identify yourself, you have to follow these rules, and if you don't follow these rules, we're going to ostracize you, we're going to exorcise you and get you out, we're going to kill you or make you less than or make you under. So once you do that and you go past the heart, you don't go through the heart, there's a lot of room for evil. There's a lot of room for using the fears to drive the words of shame, the fears to drive the thoughts of domination, the thoughts of the judgment.
Well, the funny part about it is the typical response for a society doing that to individuals is, well, we love you, so we're going to show you you should be living this way.
Yes.
And then they beat you into submission.
Yes, but this is for your own good.
But this is for your own good. I always scratch my head over that. It's like, wait a minute. If we are all human and we all have a soul, why aren't we interacting on that level? And it was very interesting because it's like, well, this is what these people do, and this is what we do.
Right.
And you're like, but they're people too. No, but that's what they do, and this is what we do.
Us and them.
Right. So why is, And the question would arise, well, if the foundation of the people of the United States is freedom, and we are all equal and individuals under God, and they interpret it this way, and you interpret it that way, why is it that we have to have a conflict?
Well, these are the things that the heart wrestles with. The heart will if you have introspection, once you start to develop your introspection, these questions arise from the heart. The heart asks why.
But what I found fascinating is that the people within the culture are very accustomed to their habits.
Yes, well,
they don't want to change it.
No, I mean the status quo is to be defended at all costs, regardless of right or wrong.
Right.
But these are, these are all powered at the third, and they draw their root power from the second and from the first. It's the existence of the group, the existence of the tribe, of the pack, of the nation, whatever it is, which drives these sometimes unspeakable evils. Society can justify unspeakable evil as long as it can put against it that, but we're doing it for your own good. And you can think of many examples, but the key here is that the valuation of the mores and of the whole is put above any individual's value, and that's when you know you're in a toxic society. If you meet at the common dream, if you meet at the individual, you're meeting at the heart level, and to put a phrase on it, it's this: we are all human beings, equal in the sight of God, equal in the sight of the universe, and we are all different and all individuals, and therefore your way of doing things, if it doesn't harm or cause others to suffer, and this is very Buddhist, is as equal and as valid as my way of doing things, which also doesn't harm, doesn't cause others to suffer. These are at the heart level, and you don't find conflict because all you find is differences, and differences which are not necessarily judgments. You say, well, you're different, and I say, yeah, you're different, and so do we have any synergies? Can we form a relationship, or no? All these things are left on the table of the heart. You say, well, yeah, they're different, and we're different, and we're moving on. But when you fall into the third, the second, the first, and you start to say, well, they're different and bad, or we're different and good, and you start doing the value judgments, short-circuiting the heart, we're doing this because it's good, right, and it's us. We are that thing, and they are not that thing, and so we have to convince them through poking and badness that they're wrong. It's stupid, but in fact, much of the evil and much of the bloodshed in the world is driven by these exact same things.
Yes. This exact way of thinking is the cause of a lot of the misery that humans go through.
Gautama, all life is suffering, was basically all what he saw around him, driven through these lower gates and without the heart, was suffering. And it was only through expansion, through enlightenment, through encapsulation and realizing that the individual is the most important thing, not the group, not the judgment, not the right, not the wrong, not the engagement with the world, not the engagement with all the lower forms, which is where these things, his idea was, where these things are coming from. And you can see it. I mean, fear and its accompaniment, anger, and its writ large, application of societal anger and societal fear drives suffering. It drives misery. It drives death. Drives destruction. But when we're all just individual humans, when you see another, you can feel who they are. You know that we are equal. You know that I am you, you are me, that your suffering is my suffering, that your joy is my joy. We know this, but we allow ourselves to live the lie. It's this lie that we tell ourselves over and over again enough that becomes powerful. And it is based in fear, or it becomes our fear. It's something to understand. It's something to meditate about, to bring into the heart, to allow space for, and to give yourself the one prime tenet I would say that we should give ourselves, all of ourselves, is to realize that, I could be wrong. I could be acting this way myself. And if you even think about it for a second, you say, yes, the things that I am doing could equally be seen as much against the other as you know what, I hear the music. Here we are, and we have to get out of here.
Okay.
Gosh, we're bad and we're wrong. I am Michael Lyons. This is Soul of Everyman, and we've gone over.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Scott.
And I'm Margaret, and
thank you for
you
listening.
for listening.
Darn.